Hello and welcome to the Unleash podcast brought to you by Embrace the Power. Unleash your potential, make your impact. I'm your host, Amy Lee Miller. And before I introduce our very special guest today, which I'm super excited to do, I just want to give a quick acknowledgement and reminder to check out our show affiliate, Planetary Design, your one-stop shop for your indoor and outdoor coffee brewing and storage needs. So if the great outdoors, that kind of adventurous lifestyle is your thing, you don't have to sacrifice a great cup of coffee. So we've got their website linked below, Planetary Design, with the affiliate code 1886. All right. And now very excited to welcome a very special guest today. Joining us from Dallas, Texas is a VP level sales leader, bringing over 25 years of sales experience, leading teams both at smaller startup organizations and Fortune 500 companies. Welcome to the show, sales leader, Pete Essex.
Thanks, Amy. It's great to be here.
Thank you so much for being here. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. It's 120 degrees in Dallas, so it's pretty warm today. It's like
my goodness.
I've been here 20 years and I've never seen it like this before. I mean, it's like 100, but with the humidity and everything, it's like 120. There's all kind of warnings and stuff out there. But hey, it's Texas. You know,
Oh my goodness. Yeah. Right. Are you from Texas originally? So you're used to that kind of heat?
I am. I spent most of my life here in Texas, Houston, Dallas, Austin, El Paso. So I've been around the block in Dallas or in Texas for sure.
Okay. Wow. So are you staying inside today?
I am. And what's really weird about Texas, we've had last week we had 3 hailstorms all in a row.
Oh my goodness.
It's actually storming now. So I haven't been outside. Storms rolled in, but there's lightning and thunder and everything else right now. So just part of living in Texas. You just roll with it.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, good. Well, thanks. Hopefully you get some cool air conditioning time to join us today and share a little bit, some of your insights on sales leadership. So you've done a lot in your sales career, building and leading teams, as I mentioned, with both small and large organizations. And I'm curious if you find that the hiring process is or should be different, depending on the type of organization, how long it's been around and how big it is.
Yeah, it depends. You know, I was in the military and then transitioned out. And I've worked for big companies, J&J, Boston Scientific. And, you know, we had our own recruiters in those bigger companies, and they have a very well-defined process. The startups and smaller companies I'm working with now, they don't have that. It's not to say that type of person couldn't work in, you know, a good sales rep couldn't work in both kinds of companies. But, you know, you've got to kind of feel that person out and get an idea of what, you know, makes them tick and what they would be happy with. And I think, you know, the resources you have in a bigger company are usually a lot more. You've got inside recruiters, you got massive budgets. Smaller companies, you know, they might not have that big a budget to hire people. You've got to find the right person that wants to be with, you know, a small, nimble, fast growing company, lots of upside, or, you know, you're with the super tanker. So it just depends. And I think what you can do is there's a lot of ways to skin a cat, but if you can, you know, bring resources together, you know, big company wise, and I have to pay that. That's kind of what I do is I have recruiting companies and people I work with and recruiting processes that I put in place that I help these smaller companies, but I take really what I've learned best from the bigger companies that are good, adapt it to the smaller companies and just modify it to where it works.
Okay, that's great. Yeah, so that brings us into, I did want to ask you, of course, so you've transitioned now from working directly in a leadership role, VP sales level leadership with these large companies and sometimes smaller companies, but now to consulting with Sales Xceleration. So I was curious, the type of organizations that you're mostly working with, small, medium, large, and what are some of the the challenges that they tend to see? Do they vary depending on the type of organization? And what are some of the solutions that you help with?
Sure, great question. So I've worked, like I said, for those bigger mega companies, and I worked with a company called Conceptus, and we grew it from 42 to 142 million, and we sold it to Bear for a
Wow.
billion too.
Oh my
And
goodness.
I kind of got the bug, working with smaller companies. So I did that towards the end of my corporate career, and just found I really liked helping smaller companies and working with smaller companies, working with owners and that type of thing. So when I transitioned to Sales Xceleration, it's been an absolute dream. I work in all kind of verticals. Most of my experience has been in healthcare. I've got some manufacturing, some HR, but I find myself working in SaaS, telecommunications. There's so many different verticals that I'm working in now, and you learn so much from every different company. And it's been a real pleasure being able to go in and bring those proven things that we do in larger companies to smaller companies. And that's what, as a fractional VP of sales, I'm able to do and help those business owners out and those CEOs out to achieve record-setting sales, really, because they don't have all the processes in place that they need to, from CRM to forecasting tools to hiring sales reps, compensation programs. So all that infrastructure is generally what I will go in, work with the business owner. And at Sales Xceleration, it's different than other consulting companies because we actually do the work. So I come in there as a fractional VP of sales, I set all this stuff up, and then turn it back over to the business owner at the end of the engagement, which is, maybe 3-4 months. And then a lot of times they want me to stick around and really fine tune it. And it could be up to a year. And my goal is, at the end of that year, have everything just right where I can give it back to that business owner and have somebody trained up in the company to take my role, or hire somebody from the outside to lead that sales organization going forward.
That sounds so rewarding. And that was one of my questions too, during that process where you are putting the process in place and getting everything going. Are you also training somebody so that they're ready to go once you step away? So you could either be doing that or hiring somebody to come in.
Exactly. Yeah, there's a great mentoring program, and there's actually a sales leader. I'm CSL qualified as certified sales leader, where we can do classes, weekly classes, a 16-week program where we'll train a junior person up that may not have, managed before or have very limited management experience, and take them through 16 modules of how to be a sales leader. At the end of that 16 weeks, it's pretty amazing to see that transition, and people walk away from it, employees that want to move forward. And I always think, promote from within if you can. That's great for morale. And it's really rewarding. And, it's a known entity, right? When you hire somebody from the outside, you really don't know them, but you do your due diligence. And if you do a good job, they'll do great. But, you just don't know, like, if you had somebody actually in the company that you've known for a long time, their work ethic, what makes them tick. It's pretty amazing to do that. So I can do both things.
Very rewarding. And I'm glad that you brought that up, because I've been wondering about this myself, because I do recruiting, and then I also do consulting, coaching, helping hiring managers and companies improve their process. So maybe like a little fraction of what you do. I kind of just one of the elements I work on doing that myself. But in recruiting, working with leaders, I definitely appreciate when companies and hiring managers are open to internal and external candidates. Just most important to get the right person in place. But I do sometimes hear, in speaking with candidates, just at various companies, some frustrations that, maybe they were slated to be promoted, or for they don't know the reason, but the company is not hiring from within, and they're taking, they're just hiring external folks. And then that is, of course, like you shared, not the best for morale. But I'm wondering what the, I guess, unless you're looking to do a culture shift to growth or trajectory in a certain direction with the company, what do you think would be the benefits of not hiring, or promoting rather, from within?
So the benefits of promoting from within, I think
or not promoting from within, because I'm wondering, I don't know if it's kind of controversial to talk about or not, but I'm just curious about it, why companies would decide to not look at all within and go with external?
That is a great question. It just depends. There may not be anybody that wants the job because sales management may be something that people don't want to do. You may
Mm-hmm.
not have the right talent in your bench to do that. I always
Mm-hmm.
like when I hire, talk about, career progression and I always ask people in the interview process, what do you want to do long term? Where do you see yourself in 5 years? Where would you like to be at this company? And would you like to be leading a division, or, there's sole contributors and there's the leaders, and they've got to have that basic leadership. You can learn it, but there's something innate about leaders. And in the military, you learn that, and you can develop leaders, but they have to be willing to do it, willing to listen, willing to do a lot of different things. And if they are willing to do that and they have goals to achieve, higher levels, then we can make that work. But a lot of times companies just don't have that. They may have sole contributors. They
Mm-hmm.
may have high turnover. There could be some, morale issues that need to be addressed, culture issues that be addressed. And
Mm-hmm.
sometimes you
Okay.
can't do it within that particular company, but
Uh-huh.
you can hire somebody from the outside with a particular group of skill sets or a particular experience that you'll need to kind of make that transition, if
Mm-hmm.
that's what that company needs, what that business owner wants to do.
Okay. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
a great perspective. That makes a lot of sense. Do you find, or have you found in your leadership experience building teams with different companies that when that happens, when somebody's brought in from the outside and maybe somebody that wanted the position, maybe their morale is down. Do you find that sometimes people don't speak up and from inside the company and say, "Hey, I want to put my name in for this"? Do you find that, or do you find that the people that want to get promoted tend to speak up and voice what it is they're looking for?
I think it depends. It's really both. I think communication is key, and open communication is key. And then, when you post a job, I think you allow internal candidates to interview. Now, they may not
Mm-hmm.
get it, but at
Mm-hmm.
least they have the opportunity to interview. I think that's a big check to make sure happens. And then if they don't get it, I think you sit down with them and you tell them, why you made that decision with that other candidate, because they're with the company, they're a valued employee, and just because you didn't get it one time, you got to try again, right? I mean,
Yeah.
it's just one decision in a company doesn't build a career, and just because you don't get it one time doesn't
Mm-hmm.
mean you're not going to get it next time. I remember I was a manager. I interviewed for a director job. I didn't get it. A year from that point in time, actually, it was 9 months. They did a national sales manager job. I interviewed with all the other directors. I got it, and I jumped the level. And there were a
Oh,
lot of people that
wow.
were
That's
pretty upset about
amazing.
that. But I sat down with each of those individuals and talked to them, and I think communication really
Mm-hmm.
helps in that instance. And eventually I'll move on. And if they didn't get it that time, let's put down a path for you to get to where you want to be, and put a
Mm-hmm.
timeline together, training programs, all that kind of stuff, and mentor and train that person up so the next time they do get it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, really good stuff. I like that you shared that in working right now. So most of your leadership experience prior to Sales Acceleration was within the medical industry, and so now you're helping companies in various industries. So it
Mhm.
sounds like the skill set or the tools that you're bringing in, that you're teaching in
Mhm.
building teams, translate across industries, and that's what I've thought as well. Is that what you tend to find? There are certain. Go
Mhm.
ahead.
Absolutely. Because there's some basic things that you need to do. There's a company I'm working right now that does telecommunications, and I'm a pilot. I'm a kind of a gadget guy. I always use radios and stuff, but I've never sold them before. This company does radios for schools and things like that, where mass casualty events. I mean, cell phones don't work, but these radios, you don't think they're a big deal, but they're a $1,500 piece of equipment that's really a life-saving piece of equipment. And if those first responders can't talk to the people that go inside, or every teacher has a radio, every bus driver has a radio, every security person has a radio, And it's been fascinating learning about all those different types of things. And but there's basic premises in sales. There's your CRM, there's your sales planning, there's the sales call, there's your sales process, and all of this stuff is defined no matter what you're selling. And
Mm-hmm.
if you follow those, that good best practice type of things, and you have the follow up and you send follow up emails. I mean, a lot of times, a sale, it's not made, and it takes on average, I think it's between 8 and 11 calls before a sale
Mm-hmm.
is made. So
Yeah.
those types of things I think apply to no matter what you're selling, whether it's a product, a service, what have you. But if you do those things and you do it consistently and you build upon it, you can be successful no matter what you're selling.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I like
Yeah.
that you mentioned build upon, because one of the things I wanted to ask you about is I believe in, and I'm sure you do as well, that in order to overcome any challenge, achieve any goal, you have to start with a solid foundation. So I'm
Yeah.
curious, when you are working with a new client, what's the first area of business that you're going to look at with them? Or maybe it's different depending on the client, but I'd love to hear about that.
Well, the first time I sit down with a business owner, I do a lot of listening. It's kind of like, why are we here? And you hear all kind of things. My sales are decreasing. I hire sales reps. They leave constantly, constant turnover. My sales manager's my brother-in-law. He's never really sold anything in his life. My whole livelihood, my company is based on this. I love brother-in-laws, but there's this particular skill set that you're looking for. And like I said, you can learn things. If people are willing to learn things and they've got that core drive and motivation and really want to become a salesperson, I can get them to where they want to be. And you put a plan together for them, and you start them out small, build success over time. But the other thing with sales, I mean, like I love hiring people that have sold computers and back in the day copiers, because they might get 100 or 200 no's a day knocking on doors, but
Brutal. Yes.
they stick with it, and my gosh, then they get to a product that that's in demand or people want, and it's amazing what happens. And the other thing is, you don't sell a product, you sell a solution, and you have to sit down with that business owner and find out what's going on in the company, where they want that company to be in 5 years. What happens if they don't change anything right now? If they just keep everything status quo, what's this going to look like a year from now? So you get them thinking about kind of outside the box, outside the status quo. And if they want me to, build a successful sales force, do you have a CRM? Well, we use a spreadsheet, or no, we've never done that before. There's one client that I was introduced to recently that he had one sales rep, pretty successful company, about $6 million, that he had one sales rep that actually passed away. He was the sales rep for 20 years. So the business
Oh my
owner's
goodness.
like, oh my God, what am I going to do?
Right.
So, you hire somebody like me that's fractional. I come in there, 30 years plus of sales management experience, and I can put all those things in place, plus hire the people and get them back on track. And I love hearing them. I love the visionary. I don't know if you're familiar with EOS, the Entrepreneurial Operating System. There's a book called
I don't think so.
There's a book called Traction by Gino Wickman. I love the EOS folks, because you've got to it's how to best run a company. And I am a big subscriber of that. You have very efficient meetings. You define your goals. You get what's called rocks, or goals, each quarter, and you have to hit them no matter what. And you've got leadership L10 meetings. So you do a meeting in 90 minutes with specific goals, and you have great outcomes, and everybody rates the meeting afterwards. So a lot of my clients are EOS customers, and I'll actually run their sales L10. And you do all those little things, and at first you may not see change, but then you kind of look back a month and you kind of see things happening. Then all of a sudden everything is right. You've got your dashboards right, your CRM right. Then all of a sudden you start seeing the metrics kind of filling in what they should be doing, the right activities. And then all of a sudden sales follow, and everybody's kind of high-fiving and stuff. But then you've got to really take that to the next level, and you've got to have that. What's that going to look like a year from now, and put that infrastructure in place. And it's like building a house. You build it on rock, you can build a skyscraper. If it's built on sand, you're not going to get it.
Yes,
So that's
all about all about the solid foundation, whatever the venture is. So one thing I was going to ask you is about resources that you recommend. So it sounds like the book Traction, and it's EOS. Is that the system, or ELS?
real operating system. Yep.
Okay. So I was going to ask if there are specific resources that you recommend to hiring managers or to companies in assessing top talent, and what that looks like. And then also a lot of times companies in recruiting, my direction, that a lot of times what they'll be looking for is a candidate with exactly the experience of what they're going to be doing in the role, so they can have sort of a plug and play candidate. So sometimes that can be great, but then it also sometimes makes sense to go outside the box a little bit. So I'm curious your thoughts on that. If you find that the number one element to be, or trait, or metric to be looking for when you're building out your candidate profile is direct candidate experience, or if there are some other metrics that are either more important or just as important.
And another great question. And one of the things I love about you, Amy, and your company and working together with you is, you spend the time to really get to know what we're looking for, and then you present great candidates, and that saves so much time. And that's something that you do that's amazing. But when I look at candidates, it's really three things I look at. It's their history. So I look at their resume, their continued, improvement, continued success. Are they President's Club winners? Have they been, reps of the year? Those types of things. And then an interview is another big part of it. So how do they present themselves? Can they handle the difficult questions? Sometimes you role play, sometimes not, but you get a feel for what that candidate's like. And then they do multiple interviews with multiple people. And then the other thing I think that's really important nowadays are these assessments that are done. We use, at Sales Xceleration, we have a variety of assessments. We'll use PST. You can use DISC. I've used DISC before. A lot of the EOS people use something called Colby, and it gives you kind of a look under the hood of how that person is wired. So I usually put those three things together, and different people interview, and then we get that team together and we discuss the candidates that have gone through, and then we make a joint decision. Because when you get a collective group of people and everybody is honed in on this one candidate, but maybe there's something we didn't see and somebody else points it out and going, yeah,
right.
And then of course, you do your background checks and all that other kind of stuff and check references. So it's a process, but I think it's one of the most important things that managers, especially sales managers, do is hire, because the success of not only the company, but of that sales manager is going to be based upon the team that they hired. So you want to get that top talent and take them through that proven process, where at the end, this candidate was the best candidate that I could find, and they fit that bill perfectly.
Absolutely. All good stuff that you said there. Two things really stand out to me that I want to circle back to. One is having multiple people, multiple touch points, because somebody, we're all different. So we're all going to be paying attention to and hearing and listening to and picking up on different things. One book I read, I don't have the name of the author off the top of my head, but it's Hiring Smart. So good. It's written by a psychologist who actually he passed away, unfortunately, but he went into consulting for companies where they would bring him in for, these big decision, big hires. And one of the things that he writes about in the book is gut instinct, and, having somebody as part of the interview process. They could be a leader. They could be, maybe even not in a leadership role, but somebody that has really strong intuition. I think that's so important in the interview process. And I've made a lot of great hires, recruited a lot of great hires, but there's been, a couple mistakes too. Sometimes as a recruiter, you say, okay, well, we check these boxes and this is what we're missing. Here's what we want to pay attention to. Here's why I think they would be a good fit. But then also that's why there's a process, which is the second piece of what you mentioned that I want to circle back to as well. But it's so important to pay attention to that gut instinct and to have somebody, I think, in the process that is intuitive, because if you, and I've spoken with other managers too, who have shared when they've had a bad hire, that there was a gut instinct that they not necessarily, well, I guess ignored. You see that it's there, you feel that it's there, but then you you just kind of let it go. And it doesn't have to mean that, no, they're not going to be the right candidate, but I think it means that you dig deeper there. That's an area that you want to dig into, maybe give an extra assignment, just there's something that you need to dig deeper on. So do you find that as well?
I do. I mean, if there's doubt, I will always maybe bring another person in to, assess that person and to conduct an interview. The other thing we don't do as much anymore, but we used to do is if you bring a rep into, or a potential rep into a company, is you actually put them in the field for a day with another rep and really see how they interact with candidates, because that's kind of that's the environment they work in. If they're uncomfortable, like with medical, I've hired folks before in medical that they say they've done it before, but then they get in and they can't talk to doctors. And that's kind of that was like, that's person's probably not the right person. There was an ex-football player that we hired once, and he said, no problem in the OR, no problem with blood. And as soon as the surgeon the person passed out. The nurse pushed him against the wall, and the doctor.
Oh my goodness!
Yeah, I mean, there's all kind of things and value in actually, having that person in that environment. But short of doing that, I do think that doing a thorough process, doing the assessment, multiple interviews, and really testing their closing skills, you're going to get a pretty good idea. And then references, that's another big one. I think that. A lot of times they'll just give references. You got to take them with a grain of salt, because I've never really had a reference that said, well, I did once. I don't know why that person suggested, that reference, but usually you're going to get really good references. But as you dig deeper, you can ask questions and find things out, maybe behaviorally or in their history, that you kind of go, that's not what came up during the interview. And as long as you ask the questions, and you listen and dig deeper and find, kind of what's, I use under the hood a lot, find what's under the hood, you can kind of, glean a lot of good information from that. But I do agree with you that you put all that together, it's kind of a gut feeling, but then you've got your metrics, your minimum, and then ultimately you make that decision, you make that offer.
Yeah, I find that, or in my experience, I've seen very lengthy interview processes, which really can have good results in yielding the right candidate, because they stick it out. And it's definitely important to have a process. But sometimes you have a rushed process where companies, leaders really want to get the candidate in by the start date for a product launch, that kind of thing. Sometimes it works out, but other times, you end up with high turnover a year later. So I agree with you. Process is so important. Do you, I want to circle back to company culture and two sides to that. I think it's so important to have established and be able to articulate, from the leader, the CEO down, this is the culture that we're creating. This is why we're creating it, so that leaders can tell that story, so that each leader from CEO to VP to RD to district manager, so that when they're talking with their potential candidates, they can articulate the story of the company and the culture, so that whatever story we tell, that's what we're going to attract. And if that's muddy or wrong, you're going to attract the wrong talent. And then you have a problem once they accept the offer. So I'm curious if the story of the culture and articulating that is part of what you consult on with Sales Xceleration, and in the past too, in your other leadership roles.
Yeah. Another great question, Amy. I think that culture is absolutely everything. I worked for a big company where our turnover was probably 50%, 49% when they hired me. When I left, it was probably less than 5%. But
wow, good job. That's amazing.
Yeah, and that was a big, will remain unnamed company. And, we had 160 reps in the field. It was just, there was such a disconnect to your, the point of your question. But I do, with the smaller companies I work with now, I think it's important for the CEO to be involved. And if they don't want to be, that's fine too. But then I'm going to really understand what that culture is all about. But like, there's another company I'm working with right now that the CEO wants to be involved. And CEOs, sometimes they're good interviewers, sometimes they're not. Salespeople, they may understand them, they may not. But one of the things they do well is they're the visionary, and they know where that company wants to go, and they set the tone for the company. And I think it's so important for, especially with a smaller company, for the sales reps to sit down, the candidates to sit down with that CEO, get an idea of what that culture's like, what that vision is like, what that day-to-day is going to be like, and how fast it's going to be changing. I mean, a lot of big companies, you go in and, there's no change day after day after day. A lot of small companies, it's changing. Every day is different. It's exciting. You got to have that right person, and it's got to be a cultural fit. If somebody goes in, they think they're going to do X, and all of a sudden they're doing Y, and all these other things happen, and they're cool with it, and they can like ebb and flow, it's probably a good fit. But if change is something that they're not comfortable with, and they're with a small company that's constantly changing, it's probably not a great fit for them. And culturally, it's really not going to work over the long term, probably at the short term.
Yeah, absolutely. I've seen that a lot too. And I think it's just as important for the candidate. A lot of times I hear this from candidates say, and it's normal, it's human nature. We want to be wanted. So we want to move forward in the interview process, but do we really, take a step back and try to ask the questions that you need to know as a candidate about the company, about the culture, so that you can really envision yourself in the day in the life and understand if that's a place that you want to be, because otherwise you're going to find yourself uncomfortable and looking again in 6 months. And that's going to be very disruptive to professional and personal life. So
I always ask that question in my interviews. Is I give the candidate a chance to ask questions, and the way I state it is, as much as we're looking for the right candidate, you need to be looking for the right company. And I really take note on what kind of questions they're asking. And, and that tells me a lot how that candidate thinks and how they're going to fit in, potentially with the company. So I think that's a really important question to ask, and let them talk and see which direction they take it once you give them kind of the reins and let them kind of get creative and ask the questions. Some candidates, they don't ask any questions, and that can be telling as well.
Yeah. Big red flag. The types, the questions, and asking questions, having good questions, but also what you ask, the type of questions, is very telling and very important in the interview process on the part of the candidate. It shows confidence. If you're confident and you believe in yourself that you're going to find the right opportunity, you're not afraid to ask the questions that you need to know. And are you, your ability to ask good questions, I feel, demonstrates your ability to prioritize. If you're asking a question, about training and benefits before you understand what's the day in the life, these are not very, very good questions. So what's one piece of advice you would have for maybe two for new managers who are new to leadership and have not yet gone through a hiring process, but then also for a hiring manager who's maybe seasoned but has had some bad hires? And when that happens, I feel like you have a confidence hit and you have some fear, and that can then impact in a negative way your next hire. So any advice for leaders on that?
Yeah, so for new managers that are just starting, and I do this with business owners and leaders in the smaller companies, is there's a list of questions that you can ask, and it helps guide them where they're not going kind of off script. There's questions that are designed to find out, how that candidate handles adversity, how that candidate handles pressure, the thought process. So there's specific questions you can ask. And then there's a rating form at the end of the packet that I usually share. You ask about resources that I share with businesses. So I usually hand that out. Usually they'll use it and they'll adapt it and they'll use it throughout the company, which is fantastic. It really does help, solidify that process. And with new managers, I think what I like to do is maybe do joint interviews. I've done this in corporate a lot, where I'll sit in on the interview. I'll, critique afterwards. Sometimes I'll be sitting there and I'll just kind of listen. And then, I'll critique, and then I'll say, hey, let me show you how to do one if they want me to do one. And then they'll do one, and you'll see so much improvement. And just to know that, you're in this together. Let them know it's an extremely important decision, and they're not in it alone. I'm here to help them make the right decision. There's a lot of things that weigh into it. Don't get intimidated. and the more you do it, the better off you're going to be at it. So that's for a new manager. For an existing manager, all of us that recruit and hire, you're going to have a bad hire. and if somebody has that, then you work with HR and you try to get that person adjusted, or maybe in a different job, or maybe you might have to take another path. But just know that you need to learn from that experience. It's so important in what you do, and maybe you could tweak the process a little bit along the way. Maybe involve another person, maybe do a different assessment, maybe ask a few more different questions, maybe just take a day to kind of think about it and put it through your algorithm. So at the end you say, yes, that's the person I want. Because a lot of times with hiring, you hire in your own image. And that's a mistake that a lot of managers make, both new and seasoned. And you've got to really look at the job and can that person do the job? Do they fit culturally? Can they be successful? How much, supervision are they going to get? Is it a little? Are they a lot? Are they comfortable being, an outside rep? Do they come into the office every once in a while, for sales meetings? So all of those different things kind of really matter. And you just make sure if it's a bad hire, you deal with it, you get back on the horse, start up again, learn from your mistakes and move forward. But you do get better over time. You do get a lot better over time. And the more you interview, the better off you get at it. And, you work with, great recruiters, you work with your systems. And if something doesn't work, you tweak it and you get better and better each time. I think the Japanese call it Kaizen, or continuous improvement.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
that to, selling.
I love that. Yeah, you could apply that to everything and anything in life. So that's I think that's very encouraging. That's great advice, and kind of takes some pressure off, just like anything, as long as we learn from it, take some time to sit and consider the process and what we can change moving forward to have a better result, then we're going to have a better result. So how can we, so I've got your website here, and I'll pop your LinkedIn up here, and then we'll link both below. But if somebody would like to get in touch with you and learn about maybe utilizing your resources or using you as a resource with Sales Xceleration, what's the best way for us to reach out to you?
Super easy, Amy. I'm right there on LinkedIn, just Pete Essex. You search Pete Essex and I come up right at the top of LinkedIn. You can do a Google search. I think I come up at the top of that one. Cell number is 817-907-7365. That's on LinkedIn too.
Okay, great.
And give me a call. And if it's a small business, at the bottom of my signature block, there's an assessment that you can take that you can actually judge the effectiveness. It's 10 simple questions. It's free. And you can kind of see where your company's at. And just give me a call, and I'm happy to give some free advice. And if I can help, I'm more than happy to help. If I can't help, and say they leave. This happened twice last week. I wasn't really the right fit for what this company was looking for. They really needed lead generation. And with Sales Xceleration, I have so many, partners, productivity partners that I can refer to that can help with lead gen or can help with, CRM implementation. I can do that myself, but if there's something bigger that needs to happen, and there's just a plethora of different things I can do to help introduce, businesses to help with that. But yeah, I'm more than willing to help, and I get so much satisfaction out of that and seeing things turn around. I love getting phone calls from reps and, CEOs and talk about how good things are going, from the past that I've worked with in the past. I love that. Absolutely love it.
I can see that you do. And I have no doubt that you're a great resource too. Well, with all of your experience and you've made quite an impact, I'm sure, on all of the leaders and teams that you've built out. And now you get to continue that with the businesses that you're consulting for. So great to have you here. Thank you so much for taking time to come on the show and share some of your insights. Hopefully it was helpful to hiring managers out there, as well as candidates, maybe even CEOs of companies. So yeah, really appreciate you, Pete.
Yeah, it was great to see you, Amy. Thank you so much for having me on.
Absolutely. And thank you so much to our listeners. Really appreciate you guys. If you are a hiring manager and you are looking to improve your hiring process and want to steal some tips, I recommend my book, Ready, Set, Recruit, The Hiring Manager's Guide to Recruiting with Confidence. It's available on Amazon. And definitely follow us on, subscribe to Embrace the Power here. Come back for more inspirational interviews. And until next time, stay curious.